I'm Rob, the curator of Word 7 podcast. I'm so excited to be talking to Saul Rubinek, who's been acting for decades, the veteran actor, journeyman actor, and now is starring in the Copenhagen Test, which is really becoming such a sensation on Peacock. I implore you all to watch it because there are so many twists and turns. You get a bit of whiplash in a good way. Saul, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
When you first read this script, what was the moment that made you think, I really want to do this. I have to do
whoever
this.
is watching to think that you are in the clear now. Then we use you to find them and destroy them. I'm ready.
He's conflicted, but he's on board.
How do you know that you're doing the right thing?
Be grateful for all the things you don't know.
No matter what anybody says, I did not betray this country.
We either save the mission or save his life.
Are you in?
Copenhagen Test itself is a title, is about making a moral choice. Do the ends justify the means, or do the means, if you operate morally and ethically, whatever the end is going to be, that is ethical.
That's right.
This extraordinarily interesting problem exists in our lives as human beings every day in terms of what we do for our jobs, how we operate in terms of our relationships with our children and our partners, ourselves, our own idea of what self-worth and whether I'm an ethical person or not, how we behave with our aging parents or not.
Mm-hmm.
These things that we do are sometimes entertainingly and propulsively entertainingly done in an espionage series or an espionage movie as they are here. You've got an entertaining series with occasional very propulsive action, an extraordinarily engaging leading man, a really great cast. But what you also have is a great piece of writing that is shepherded by two great showrunners, Thomas Brandon and Jennifer Yale, herself an Emmy Award-winning writer, and a playwright who have, for some amazing reason, been supported by the executives at this network and by NBC Universal. What a wonderful thing. Now, I have a great history with them. I did Warehouse 13 for 5 years for NBC Universal for its sci-fi network, and they were wonderful to us. We created a great series I'm really proud of. So I'm not that surprised, but that's a while ago. You know, that series started in 2010. Here, whatever they are, they did an amazing thing. They supported Thomas Brandon's vision. Thomas Brandon and Jennifer Yale supported the directors. And then not only was it an amazing piece of writing that doesn't talk down to the audience and keeps them guessing and keeps the ground being pulled out from under them, because not just because, you know, there's cliffhangers all the time. Yes, but also for ethical reasons. For your being pulled, the ground is being pulled out from under you as a viewer, not just because of a cliffhanger, but because your ideas about what is wrong and what is right is being put to the test here as a viewer, just as it is for the main character, Alexander.
Exactly.
So that's the brilliance of the show. Now, not only is that happening, but I can tell you whether you're working in a theater situation where you might get an audience of 15 people coming for some underground theater stuff, which I did do, or you're working on $100 million series, the same thing is true for the workers. And that is, are you in an atmosphere where you are being allowed to be vulnerable and fall flat on your face? Or are you in an atmosphere where you have to be right all the time because the vision of the people running it is paramount? I can tell you that when I did Unforgiven, Academy Award-winning movie, that Clint Eastwood might as well have had a T-shirt on. Now, I can tell you many directors who just want what they want have a T-shirt on that says "My Vision" on the front, and on the back says "Shall be realized." By hook or by crook. Clint Eastwood's T-shirt would have said, he didn't have one, but it would have said "My Vision." On the back, it would have said, "Hopefully will be transcended." And in order for that to happen, you have to risk your vision. In the same way, and you have to create an atmosphere, which Clint was able to do, of forgiveness and safety, so that the people working with him, the designers, the cinematographer, the actors, the everyone has a feeling, props people, the set deck, they have a feeling that they can take chances, that they don't have to match a vision. He's like, Clint was like a jazz musician. His background is jazz musician, where you jam. There isn't a right or wrong. You let the people do their jobs. Otherwise, you would do it for them. Some directors want to do that. But these people, Thomas Brandon and Jennifer Yale and Simu Liu, who's a lead actor, allowed an atmosphere of safety. And one of the things I can say about Simu, and by the way, he was bartender number 2 on an early episode of Warehouse 13. Wasn't in that scene, but still, one of his starts was on Warehouse. That was pretty cool. But Simu understands something that leading actors, many don't understand, and maybe it's because he was on Kim's Convenience. He told me the lead actor on that was a very kind and wonderful actor. Maybe he learned it there, which is one of the most successful sitcoms in the history of Canadian television, which is where he seemingly really learned his craft, I think. But what he brought with him was this understanding that if you're a leader, you're not there to be supported by everybody. If you're a leader, you're there to support everyone else. If you're a leader, you're the hub that's not there to be supported by the spokes. The hub is there for only one reason, to make this wheel go round, and that is to support the spokes and make the wheel go. So he understood that leadership was supporting everybody, and that's what he did. He supported everybody else. Plus, you have showrunners who are creating an atmosphere for the directors, for the actors, where you could take chances, where you might fail, but then you could be better than competence, because if you're not in that atmosphere, all you can really expect is a level of competence. But if you're willing to take chances and you risk failure, don't forget, then you might rise above it, which I think this show has done. And you can't do that if you're a showrunner unless you have the support of the executives at the network. You cannot do it.
There's a lot to unpack in that, because my second question was really going to be, or statement really, the Copenhagen Test is, of course, escapist entertainment in one way of looking at it, but it's also feels uncomfortably relevant right now. And we used to say Sophie's Choice all the time. We can now say the Copenhagen Test as well. It's the same principle. My question to you, Saul, though, is espionage is still so enduring in film and television. Why do you think audiences never tire of watching double lives, secrets, moral compromise? It's exciting. And we want to watch it. We want to be part of it.
Well, I may answer this in a way that isn't directly connected, but maybe you'll get it in a way that I mean it, but I'll try to explain it. I was born in a refugee camp in Germany. My parents were Holocaust survivors, Eastern European Jews, fought at the end of the Second World War in the Russian zone, because the world was divided up by Stalin and Roosevelt. And, by Churchill, Potsdam. So the Russians, British, and American zones. And if Jews found themselves in Eastern Europe, in the Russian zone, they ran like hell to the American zone. So I was born in a refugee camp outside of Munich. The camp that I was born in, I'm going to get to this espionage question, I swear. The camp that I was born in had the highest birth rate per capita in the world. Okay. It was one of the largest refugee camps in all of Europe, 5,000 people.
Wow.
Robert, today there are refugee camps with 500,000 people.
Yeah, everywhere.
So if you're asking me why people are interested in espionage, is because the world is in trouble, and it's always been in trouble. There's always been forces of darkness, and there's been forces of light. Every culture, every single culture has victims. Every single culture has perpetrators. Every single culture has bystanders. Every single culture has heroes and cowards. And as an actor, I know all those qualities are sometimes in the same person on the same goddamn day. And so when you are looking for a way to tell a story like that, then you might want to tell a story about misguided patriotism. You might want to tell a story about well-guided patriotism. You might want to show what is the difference between people who are ethically patriotic and people who aren't. And do those people even know about themselves, whether they're unethically patriotic? Do they think that they're ethically compromised? Or do they believe that they're doing good? Do you think that Hitler believed he was doing evil? I think he believed he was temporary. I believe he thought that the ends justified the means. You think that Putin believes that he wants a greater Russia? Do you think he wants power and money? I think he has a vision for Russia. And there is collateral damage. And when you take it on a much smaller level for a particular operation, a particular espionage operation of somebody's safety or getting them from one place to another, making sure that the material that they're safeguarding that you need in order to protect your country, are you going to let that person die if it looks like your country is going to benefit from it? Or do you think if you let that person die, then why even let your country live? Since what do you really stand for? What do you stand for? What do you stand for? What do you stand for? Look at the bridge of River Kwai. He's in a prison camp, Alec Guinness. And he eventually, his last line before he dies is, "What have I done?" Spoiler alert. What have I done? He's built a bridge for his enemy. And he does because he just believes he's lost his way. We are always going to be fascinated by this. We like to be entertained, and espionage has in it not only action and the possibility of death and danger and betrayal and who is who. It's really fun. You want to guess. We're safe. We're back home. We're safe.
That's right.
If they betray that person, it's not going to be me they betray. But the truth is that if it really gets to you, if it's really good, you'll start to think about your own life too. Because even though you're not a spy, you've been betrayed, or you wouldn't be human. You've betrayed others, or you wouldn't be human. It might be on a small scale. Right.
You make moral compromises.
You make moral compromises, and you try not to. You may have children who you're trying to teach to be ethically good. You may have failed. You may have regrets. You may need to find a way back from some wrong path you've taken. And this wonderful metaphor of the spy universe allows us to do that in a very entertaining way, and in a way that can also get to you without preaching at you, without trying to teach you lessons. It's just fun. It's entertaining, and it's dangerous, and it's interesting, and you're caught off guard. And when it's well done, like the Copenhagen Test. So I only read, the first episode, but I knew I wanted to be part of it. Long answer to a short question.
Yeah. I'm wondering if this, given all of your experience over the years as an actor, performer, filmmaker, did this role test you in a way that no other role has done so far?
I can't. You
can't say a word.
I can't. No, I can't. Because look, there's all kinds of things in here. Yes, every role does this, but I tell you what. Let's let Copenhagen Test go for a minute. Okay.
Yeah.
Let me tell you about something else. So I suggested that something about my life here. In 1986, I took my parents back to Poland to have a reunion between my parents and the Polish farmers who hid them for 2.5 years. And I shot this documentary in communist Poland with the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, played all over the world. It's called So Many Miracles. And at the same time, I wrote a book that was only published in the British Commonwealth. So it was published in 1987 in England, in Australia, in New Zealand, and Canada, also called So Many Miracles. And which was mostly interviews with my parents about their lives before, during, and after the Second World War as Polish Jews. And they survived together. They were in love. It's a great love story. In 2017, my friend Rick Cleveland said to me, "You're not done with this story." Now, my parents were long gone. And I said, "What do you mean?" And Rick, who, I directed Jerry and Tom that he wrote. He was an Emmy winner by this time, a very well-known playwright, somebody I loved and respected. certainly, a very accomplished playwright. I had written one play called Terrible Advice, which was on in London and translated into German, and was on in Berlin. It was a hit play, but only one play. Rick had many. And he said, well, you're not done with this stuff. You've told everybody's story but your own. You haven't talked about your sister. You haven't talked about your daughter, her best friend was a great granddaughter of an SS captain. You haven't talked about your story. I said, leave me the hell alone. I swore at him for a while. I said, I was a good Jewish boy. I took my parents back to Poland. I wrote a book about them. The documentary played at the Toronto Film Festival in 1987. My parents were in the audience. The audience stood up and applauded them. The book was a bestseller in Canada. It went from hardcover to softcover. I've done my thing. I'm done. He said, look how defensive you are. Look how defensive you are. You have told everybody's story but yours. So then I knew he was right. He said, look, I'll be your dramaturge. I'll help you do this. Okay. I'll spend however long you need. I'll be there for you if you write this play. 2 years, nothing happened. I just too many stories. And then in 2019, I did a series with Al Pacino called Hunters.
Yeah.
And in this show, I play a version of my father. It's 1970s. It's a bunch of vigilantes hunting Nazis. And I'm with Pacino, and I'm in New York. There's a lot of theater. And I'm playing a Holocaust survivor with the accent of my father and somebody who can speak Yiddish, which is my first language. Mm-hmm. And I'm seeing a lot of theater. And then because I had done a Coen Brothers movie called Ballad of Buster Scruggs, Ethan Coen knew me, and he asked me if I would do a play. Now, I hadn't done a play since my wife told me she was pregnant with Hannah in 1991, because I couldn't afford to do theater anymore. I wanted to raise a family, and I had been doing theater since I was 8 years old. And this was now, my daughter was born when I was 42, so I was like, that's that. It was 1991, no more theater. So I hadn't done a play since 1991. 1990 was when she told me she was pregnant with Hannah, right after we got married. And so now it's 2019. I haven't done a play. Mm. Okay. And Ethan says, I'm doing 6 one-act plays. They're going to be directed by Neil Pepe, who's the artistic director of the Atlantic Theater, a wonderful off-Broadway theater. We're going to rehearse it in New York. Then we're going to put it on at the Mark Taper Forum in LA. And then in the spring of 2020, we're going to bring it to the Atlantic Theater and off-Broadway. And I did it. And because I rehearsed a play, because I was in New York, because I was seeing a lot of theater, because I was playing a version of my father, I wrote that play that I couldn't write in a week. Now, I can tell you this, Robert, any damn fool can write a play, but not any damn fool can rewrite a play. Mm. And I spent a long time rewriting it. In fact, I'm still working on that. But by 2020, in my living room in February, I had a reading of my play with Judd Hirsch playing my father. And guess what happened right after that? February of 2020, you know what happened. The world shut down. And we never went with the Ethan Coen one acts to the Atlantic. But I kept rewriting my play. I did a stage reading of it in 2022 in New York with actors, wonderful actors, kept rewriting it, found a director in Canada, wonderful director, Chris Abraham, who runs one of the most important small theaters in the country, the Crows Theater. I had been doing a one-man show called Playing Shylock, which I hope to bring around the world, which we don't have time, I guess, to talk about, but I just finished doing it off Broadway. I had done it in Toronto, and Chris Abraham loved my play, and I just did a workshop, of it, with a bunch of Toronto actors. And then I immediately wrote the miniseries, and then I immediately wrote the book. And right now, if you go on Amazon in Australia, you'll find All in the Telling, a somewhat true story, and the audiobook that I did, that just published, self-published. Now I know it's not going to sell unless the miniseries gets on Netflix or the play goes to Broadway or something, right? Or the West End. I know that, but I wanted it there. I wanted it out there because who knows? I might get hit by a truck, right? So I wanted it out there, and this is what a great deal of my life is about: taking the one-man show, playing Shylock, which is really interesting piece around the world, but I want my play to get on. And Playing Shylock, by the way, we're trying to get to Melbourne and Sydney, but, we really want to get it out there. especially considering the amount of anti-Semitism that's going on in Australia right now. So I'm really interested in getting why playing Shylock is about a production of Merchant of Venice, which is canceled. And my character, an actor, is playing Shylock, and he finds out it's canceled by accident during intermission of Merchant of Venice. And the play starts with Act 2 of Merchant of Venice, and I refuse to do Act 2 because I find out that the Jewish community has pressured the theater into canceling the show, Merchant of Venice, because apparently Shylock is an anti-Semitic character. Well, the actor whose name I'm playing is Saul Rubinek. I'm playing an actor who's playing Shylock, and I'm going, why the fuck would I be doing an anti-Semitic play if I'm the child of Holocaust survivors? Then I go into the history of Shylock, and I go into the history of the play, and I tell everybody that my father wanted to do Yiddish theater in Poland, and Hitler stopped him, and he always wanted to play Shylock, and I'm playing him as if I were my father playing Shylock. So I am playing Shylock, but hath not the Jew eyes, hath not the Jew hands, organs, dimensions, senses, affections, passions, fed by the same food, helped by the same weapons. So the fact that I'm playing it as a Jew really upsets the Jewish community. It's okay to do Shylock if you're African American. It's okay if you're doing it if you're indigenous or if you're Palestinian. But doing him as a Jew, you're going to incite anti-Semitism. Because normally, if it's played by non-Jews, Jew becomes a metaphor for whatever other is currently the most oppressed in whatever community is staging it. So that play, playing Shylock, which is about that, the Jewish community stopping me from honoring my own father, lays the groundwork for a conversation that I think my play, All in the Telling, actually has. So All in the Telling, and you're going to give me this opportunity to pitch my book here. So All in the Telling, I'm going to read you a blurb here, okay? All in the Telling, this is what it says on the book cover. I'm going to tell you. All in the Telling is a novel that I wrote. It weaves together a true story of miraculous survival, a murder mystery, operatic family drama, and undying romance, and it's very funny. When Saul, young Saul, falls in love with a non-Jewish woman, he discovers that his immigrant Holocaust survivor parents are not as cool with it as he said they'd be. Their reaction is biblical. Desperate to fix his relationship with his parents, he lies and he tells them that he's writing a book. Not to mince words, he says he's got a publisher, makes up publisher, Penguin. He says he's publishing his book because his parents are going to find it hard to turn him down with anything to do, if it's about his career. Mm-hmm. So he tells them he's writing a book, that he's being paid by a publisher called Penguin, all of which is bullshit. And he's going to write a book about their story of love and survival. And in chronicling their lives in this fake book published by a non-publisher that he's lied about, Saul discovers his parents' extraordinary loyalty and their bravery. But he also discovers lies, secrets, deceptions buried in his family's past. I believe it's a story that relates to all families affected by the trauma of war and the immigrant experience through the generations, no matter who they are or where they're from. And the play is about the same thing. And that book is available. And I needed to tell people about it because I wrote it. And as I say, I self-published it because I knew I couldn't get a publisher for this. I'm not famous enough, to get a publisher to write what's called Holocaust genre. Who the fuck wants to read that stuff? But it's very funny. And now you know what it's about, right? And so my life is a great deal about trying to get playing Shylock, which I've told you about around the world, and also to get the play version of this book I wrote out into the world, right?
Yeah.
And maybe I can make this miniseries. Maybe that I've written and to make a living. So, which is why the Copenhagen Test, I hope, gets a second season.
That's it. Absolutely right. Can we talk
about
hard
out?
No, I've cancelled that hard out because I want to keep talking to you, if that's okay. Mm-hmm. Can you help me out with the pronunciation of shtetl? Have I said it correctly?
Shtetl is a word meaning small town. Yeah, it's got the E missing in it. I can tell you why
in this film.
You want to know why?
Yeah. Well, before you do, I want to just tell the audience that as a native Yiddish speaker, here you are decades into your
Mm.
career, finally performing an entire film in the language of your childhood. And I wondered, and it's also shot in one shot, which I find
Mm.
remarkable. It's a beautiful film, and I implore everyone to see it. But what did that unlock in you, that opportunity to play this character?
That's a profound question. I mean, my father was an actor in Yiddish theater. I got to work in Ukraine, which I had worked in before, about 6 months before Putin attacked Ukraine. It was in the summer of 2021 we did it. We built an entire shtetl. I mean, a little town, all of which were destroyed in the Second World War. It unlocked, you know, in a way, it was a very easy role to play because it was a little bit like doing theater because it's done in a single shot. When you do a movie in a single shot, like 1917 or Birdman, you basically are stitching together master shots, single shots for a scene, and then you find a way digitally to stitch together the next scene so that it's imperceptible and it feels like a single shot. And that creates incredible momentum. And it's a single day in a shtetl in June of 1941, the day that the Germans broke their pact with Stalin and were about to attack Ukraine. That end of that day. Shtetl, it's hard to talk about what it meant to me without talking about what it is. And there was a novel written, I think in the 60s, I forget the French writer, who wrote a novel called, I think it's Disparition, which means the disappeared. And his mother, the French novelist's mother, had died in Auschwitz. And in order to commemorate the loss of all the people who died in the Second World War, Jews, his mother, gypsies, disabled people, all the other people who were gay, or he left the letter E out of the whole book. E is the most common letter in the French language and in the English language. And in this novel, by this writer whose name's gone right out of my head, but you can find it. It's La Disparition. He created a metaphor for what is lost. Also, the letter E is pronounced in French, which is also the word for them in French. Them, they.
Georges Perec.
Georges Perec, and Perec.
Yes.
And he, I think it's pronounced Perec, but anyway, he, them, the letter E, And so to honor this novelist, he left it out of shtetl. Shtetl, what is a shtetl? You may be familiar with the kind of life that's in Fiddler on the Roof. That's not a shtetl. Here's what it is. Shtetl is, Yiddish has got the same root as English, which is German. Yiddish is German. Mm-hmm. Yiddish is the German language, okay, from 1,000 years of development, which has incorporated words like everybody else does from whatever country Jews ended up in. Polish words, English words, Estonian words, whatever. But Yiddish, but it's written in phonetic script of the Hebrew letters. It's written right to left phonetically, but it's the same root as English. It's German. Shtetl, Stet, where we get the word state. It's a Stadt, which is a town. Shtetl is a little town. But to let your audience know what they actually were, there were 9.5 million Jews in Europe, approximately 7 million in Eastern Europe, of which 5.5 million lived in shtetls.
Wow.
In shtetls, what's a shtetl? A shtetl is the mid-ground between a village and a town. A shtetl had a synagogue, it had a community center, it would be 1,000 people to 4,000 people. It was a market town. And they existed for hundreds of years. And when this film premiered in Rome, when I spoke to people who are not Jewish, they said, yes, my grandfather lived in an equivalent of a shtetl in southern Italy. They were attacked by the Turks, or in Sicily. The world was filled with these market towns, not necessarily Jewish, but they could be Ukrainian, they could be Italian, they could be, right? They could be French, they could be all these things. And these small towns, for 1,000 years in Eastern Europe, were Jewish market towns, occasionally attacked by people who, wanted to get at the Christ killers, occasionally attacked by influence from the church. Occasionally there were pogroms, which is violent attack on the Jews, and they got along also. And occasionally they got along. So the Ukrainian town, little village, would come shopping in the market town of this Jewish town, which is mostly Jews, and they would be that. Those were not just villages; they were communities, and had the preponderance of the population, all destroyed, all decimated. And when the Nazis came in, if they were in the Russian area or Russian-controlled area, the Russians forced these shtetl, these Jewish towns, to put up the Stalin flag. And when Hitler's army came in on June 21st, they would kill everybody there. So I knew all that, but this movie is not about death. It's about the life of the shtetl, and no, you don't know what that life is. What is it? It's Orthodox Jews, atheists, feminists, Zionists, anti-Zionists. If there's 1,000 Jews, there's going to be 10,000 opinions, which is a very vibrant life of growing life. Artists come from that world. Chagall comes from that world. Novelists come from that world. Painters come from that world. Politicians come from that world of all this argument and debate about what is the right way to live. It wasn't Fiddler on the Roof. That's also accurate, but that's a dorf. The word is dorf. That's a village life without a community center, without a synagogue. They weren't hubs the way all shtetl life was, hubs of the community all over Europe, especially Eastern Europe. So I know that my background comes from there. I know my first language is Yiddish. I grew up in the streets of Montreal with French Canadian working class anti-Semitic world and Jewish immigrant world that hated them just as much, you know? And I grew up I spoke Fritish, which is a combination of French and Yiddish, I guess. And I now am acting in Yiddish the way my father had been stopped from acting in Yiddish by Hitler. And it's like falling off a log. It's that easy. Because I just had to show up in a way. I mean, look, first of all, I just am playing a role like I would if I was doing a guest star role on a Law and Order episode. I'm going to have to learn the role. I still have to be in the moment. I still play the character, but I'm doing it in Yiddish and I'm doing it in Ukraine where my forefathers come from. So in a way, I had my ancestors' goats on my shoulders. And what I had to do is kind of get rid of them because I didn't want the pressure of the importance of what I was doing to get in the way of the simple fact that I'm doing a scene with my protege, who in the scene, a character who plays my protege, and this character who went away to become an artist and a filmmaker, who I thought was going to take over for me as the rabbi, the chief rabbi in this little shtetl, and was going to marry my daughter. But he went away to become a filmmaker, and now he's coming back to elope with her. And all I really do is have to play the scene, but I do have everything else, happening with me as an actor in his 70s who's acting in Yiddish in a town that was built that had been destroyed by the Holocaust. And it's very, very hard and I had to keep that all away from me, but I had to let it breathe in me. And I think if you see the movie, you'll see it breathes in me somehow. I guess that answers your question.
It does. I just think about, if I'm putting myself in your shoes, if I was doing something meaningful in the town where my parents are from and my forefathers and grandparents and so forth in Sicily, I would feel an amazing sense of kinship, but also that responsibility. And you answered the question, because obviously you're playing a role and you're doing what you've been doing for many, many years as an actor. But when it's something like this, I always wonder how difficult it is to separate the personal from the professional. Is that something that you've always had to?
No, it's always personal. And no, it's not. It's always personal. I can't play a role without it being personal. I mean, if I'm playing a bad guy, I am the bad guy. I have to identify with the character. I'm not going to comment on it. I'm not going to do it professionally. I mean, there's professional behavior, but once I'm playing a role, I have to try to be as truthful as I can be, which means being present in the moment, being able to listen, be able to react, or respond the way to react and respond are two different things. And to be able to either react instinctively or respond carefully to how I would if I were the character in that situation. And I have to put myself the way children do when they're playing make-believe, as if I am doing here, as if this is really happening. And how would I behave? And that is different depending on whether you're doing stage or film, and it depends on many, many factors, who you're working with, what kind of people, what is the atmosphere, how fast do they have to be done, what kind of freedom are you being given? Like I said, is it a safe space? Is it not a safe space? Is it an authoritarian space, or is it a collaborative space? And all of these factors come into play professionally into how you do something personally. So you're always looking as an artist to be able to have a perimeter that allows you to be free. Because if you're just given complete freedom to do whatever you want, it's almost impossible to. Yeah. So you've got a script, you've got other actors, you've got responsibilities, you've got time pressure, you've got behavior, and through all these things, which are helpful, you're going to. Then I try to be as personal, and I don't know what I'm going to do. In the moment sometimes, and when I repeat it, I try to do something different, especially in film. And I allow it to just happen. And if I've got the right people working with me, then they can help me and encourage me to improve the direction I seem to be going in. Depends on the director and the producers who are involved. But I don't really separate the actual work from. There's the professional level, but everything I do is personal.
Yeah. At this stage in your career, if you try to find, if I'm trying to find a through line from tech thriller about a world losing its privacy, perhaps, and a Yiddish film about the erasure of an entire world, and your writing and your play, what do all of these projects say to you about what you have prioritized in this stage of your career? What's worth holding on to?
I haven't spent my life, choosing between offers. I'm not some big star that does that. And even they don't always do that. I mean, no, I'm a working actor. I audition half the time for the roles I get. Sometimes it's a meeting. Sometimes it's an offer. Sometimes it's, I have to pay the bills, and I try to turn whatever I'm being offered into something better than it looks like on the page. Sometimes I'm successful at that. Sometimes not. But if you ask me about a career, these are the choices that I'm not in control of most of it. I'm not in control. I am in control of making a decision like, this is what I'm going to write this play. I am planning to take playing Shylock around the world. But for most of the jobs that you see that I've done, whether I've been leading actor or supporting actors in roles, certainly more leading actors when I was younger, and the supporting roles that I played, or what they call character roles, this is a result of accident. And the result of other people is I don't sit with 12 offers sitting in front of me trying to figure out the path of my career. I've never done that. I've just been always active. I've never waited by the phone and to do things. I left Canada in 1977 to look for more opportunities in the United States. I was a big fish in a small pond. I was doing lead roles on CBC television. I was a kind of an underground theater star in 1977. I gave it all up. I didn't give it up. I just left it to start over again in New York because I had ambitions to keep working with other people. It wasn't for money or power or fame. It was just to expand my horizons. And I many times before I was a dad and before I had a mortgage, I had turned down money in order to do something that was just more me, because I knew I would end up bitter and screwed up otherwise. So what you're asking about is a through line I can't give you, because it doesn't exist. You'll have to make it up, because all of these things most of them are beyond my control. However, my otherness as an immigrant child of survivors, my otherness in children's theater, being surrounded in the 1950s by wonderful amateur actors and actresses who are older than me, who I later found out some of them committed suicide because they were gay or lesbian and closeted in the 50s. And I didn't know that my second family were mostly another type of other than Jews,
Mm-hmm.
who were other in another way. I didn't realize that until I was in my early 20s. Wait a minute, I was kind of nurtured and protected by these people who were closeted and in terrible pressure, some of whom committed suicide in the 1950s in Ottawa. I mean, I have had a great, a kind of understanding of otherness. So even when I'm playing criminals or whatever role I'm playing, there's some secrets I've got. There's something about the otherness that I have been sympathetic to all my life that may imbue all the choices that I made, but I'd have to really look back on it. I know that what I've written, I mean, Terrible Vice is a play about people in their 40s. It's a sex comedy about revenge, friendship. It has nothing to do with being Jewish or nothing to do with it at all, really.
Yeah.
But it has to do with very close friends, and I know the struggles that they were going in their 40s and what their loyalties were about and friendship was about. And male friendship and female friendship has always fascinated me. So it's a theme, and I wrote about it. So what has that got to do? How does that fit in your timeline? It doesn't. It's like so that the truth is, yeah, it's mostly haphazard, and I'm not in control of it.
Yeah. Well, to that end, and this final question, because I often ask this to actors who've been working for a long time, and I like to give anecdotes. For example, my wife's, one of her favorite shows is Warehouse 13, right? So we know you from that. I loved you in Barney's version, right? So I've got little touchstones for the Saul Rubinek career, but how do you want to be remembered one day when you finally, leave this earth? How would you like to be remembered?
As a good father and husband? Having children has changed my life, and I married a woman much smarter than me, and we've been married 35 years. And I don't think I could be as good a father or as good a partner to my wife if she hadn't helped me be that, taught me in many ways, dragged me kicking and screaming into being a good father and a good husband. I have very kind children, very kind and wonderful children, and a wonderful marriage, and with ups and downs like all marriages. But I think that I wouldn't have been able to do that if I wasn't already doing what I love all my life. I've never really had a straight job. I've been doing it for 70 years. I do what I love, and I think, and that's not without regret and failure and accident and fucking up. But I work with artists all my life. And I try to tell stories all my life. Look, my book is called All in the Telling for a reason. It's all in the telling. And I believe that I don't really think about my legacy because I'll be gone. I'm trying to live in the present till a truck hits me, and it will eventually. And I'm just trying to continue to give what I have. I'm not really at this point interested in because you're asking a question about what I'm going to receive. You see, when you ask about legacy, I'm going to receive nothing. I'll be gone. I don't care about. I mean, what I care about is what I have to give right now. The verb "give" is what I'm trying to concentrate on.
Yeah, as much as possible until that final day, right? And that's what we're all doing, if we're lucky. Saul Rubinek, thank you so much for your time today. Everybody, please make sure you go and watch the Copenhagen Test. I found it not only really thought-provoking, but actually really entertaining, and I smashed through it very quickly. Its premieres on Showcase and Binge in Australia in February. It's already on Peacock in the United States. And
buy All in the Telling, the book, on Amazon.
Buy All in the Telling, the book. When the Shylock play arrives on your shores, go see it. Saul, thank you again for your time.
Thank you.